Okay, we're up and running. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Joshua, who is son of Patrick, my dear friend. Some of you will be familiar with Patrick. We made many videos together throughout the years. Joshua now is living with Patrick in Thailand, um, and you've gone on a little bit of an adventure.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm currently not here.
Yeah, and you told me in an email that you'd had a couple of the best days of your life, and I said, "Why is that?" And then you said because you'd never met so many people who were so kind, and I said, "Whoa, hang on, hold it, hold it, hold it!" Screech of the car brakes, because I've got a bit of a thing with kindness. Mostly, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in anything, to be fair, and it's very nihilistic. But I think evil lies behind kindness, really, fundamentally, and it doesn't take too long before you're going to find it. And so I'm always skeptical of kindness. Kindness is very, very superficial. And I was just speaking about this in the last video that I've just uploaded a couple of minutes ago. So, you state that you've never met people so kind. Well, I mean, kindness, it's all very, very easy and fucking cozy when it's superficial and it's very, very short lived, isn't it? And I think mostly kindness stems from people's fear because they do unto others what they want doing back to them. And so, most people wouldn't fare up if they're arrogant, dismissive, and haughty, and this, that, and the other. They're going to get that back. So most people, oh, hi, and this, that, and the other, and, it's kind of amiable. Particularly with foreigners when they consider that there's likely going to be a monetary exchange in it. If you're around a vicinity with a market or shops or this, that, and the other. I've traveled all over the world, so I've encountered all these different sorts of things, and I've never really met too much kindness, which was absolutely genuine from the heart. So, what do you feel about that?
No, that would make sense. It was monetary exchange involved, but so far, where I've been, I met a lot of people who are very spiritual, who are on a self-discovery journey. When I found really the kindest people I ever met was I got invited to their birthday party, even though they were already full, just because they enjoyed my company and there was music. There was a guy actually. His name was Joshua, just like me, and he was singing. So that was really an interesting coincidence. So I
Yeah.
got invited over, and I was basically a member of the family. It was really interesting. I got to meet everyone. I even went to their church. It was a very nice experience.
Yeah.
I got to meet the
So
whole community. They were Kachin from Myanmar. So
yeah,
basically, that's in the north. It's like basically they're a mix between Chinese, Burmese, and the local tribes
yeah.
people.
Now, I mean, granted, the Thai people are humble species, and you know, Buddhism is their philosophy primarily, and that exhibits many good traits from people. And so, if I was going to um, say that if I had a choice of the people on the world that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, I'd go, well, okay, give me some Middle Eastern Asians, give me some Thais, give me some people from that neck of the woods, because they are humble. They don't believe in no bullshit, silly religions, this, that, and the other. It's just an ideology, it's a way of life about being conducive with other people, giving what you expect in return. Now, what I will say is that in relation to when you travel as a young man, always bear this one in mind, Joshua, because your dad often has said that he's a little bit worried about you because you tend to see the best in people. But what I do know as a white person traveling around the world, many people will take you under their wing and they'll take you back to their family and they'll want to show you this and they want to show you that, and you think it's all very, very genuine and wonderful. wonderful. But at the end of it, somewhere, there's going to be something, usually, whereby they're going to want to extract some money out of you in some shape or form. And this could be, oh, come to my uncle's restaurant, or, oh, come on this tour, or, maybe pretty innocuous things like that. But there's a monetary thing. They're leading you somewhere. And so yours need to bear things like that in mind, and always have a level of skepticism about people's kindness. I mean,
Oh,
that's an older man speaking from experience, you know?
I get that because I actually had a bad experience. No money got accepted out of me. It was just mostly unpleasant. That was early in the year. I'd rather not touch on that yet. But no, it wasn't like that. They were college students who knows what they were in no, even education, or they were working. So no, it
Yeah,
wasn't like that. They were all from different economic
yeah.
backgrounds. Some were relatively wealthy, others were poor. I mean, it wasn't a financial transaction even between them. There was disparity, so it wasn't
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's talk about sexual
financial
transaction then,
thing.
because there's many gays out there, and there's many women that want to beguile you and lure you in, and steal your money or beguile you from your money, this that, and the other. So it's just a case of kind of like um, I don't know. Ask your dad and listen to your dad. That's all I'd say. Ask your
And that's
dad.
why I don't take much money with me. My
Sorry.
trick is always very simple. I have two wallets. I have one wallet where I don't put much money in, and I have
Yeah.
a wallet where I actually put the money in. So every time I go out, I calculate how much I should be spending,
Yeah.
and I just take what I know I need. So I just take always like $10 more than I should have. So it's not like I would be
Yeah.
losing a lot of money get stolen from.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's a
So,
habit. It's just a habit.
you're in Thailand. You're in a foreign country, the other side of the world from where you grew up, being a Dutch lad, and
Mhm.
so you are going to be experiencing a lot of stuff. And your dad's very well travelled and wise, and so you've got good stewardship within him, and so, I'm sure you'll be fine. And for a young lad, 17 years old, you're a smart cookie, genetically, disposition wise, some of us a bit more fortunate than others. Some are born daft as brushes, but, you seem to have missed that one.
It's funny. But
So you've got some subject matter that you wrote down, and as you've said, only an hour. Then we best crack on, because otherwise we won't get much time for the stuff.
mhm. Yeah, I wanted to walk back to that place because they were making food. I got to meet them and just got to talk a bit. I made like two friends already, so it was nice.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
They also find me very interesting because they're Christian, and I have read the Bible before, even as a non-Christian. So for them, it's very interesting to see how I just integrate, regardless of my challenges with their beliefs.
Right. So did you read the Bible in its entirety, the Old and the New?
Well, I listen to the old mostly because I'm Jewish. I got the stories from synagogue, so I got to listen the whole part. I didn't read the whole part, but I know it basically.
Yeah. Okay.
The
And
New
so
Testament I read.
Yeah, so then when you mix with people that don't have any belief, Buddhism as an ideology, there's no worshipping involved. There's no being afraid of a god or anything like that. Don't you feel that it's just much more freer and less constrained and less bullying?
Well, I haven't really met many strict Buddhists here in Thailand, weirdly enough. Like they do exist, but here in Thailand, it's a very liberal country in that sense. It's the most liberal countries in Asia, I'd say, probably. So more westernized, I'd guess.
Liberal for
You
what?
see all the LGBTQ stuff and all the modern values.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, ladyboys have been a theme for many, many years, and they're very well accepted. And the thing is, you see, Thailand obviously is known for its sex trade, and when you're there as a sex tourist, which the vast majority of white individual males are. Um, then you never get any animosity. You never get any snide remarks. You never feel like you're not wanted or anything like that. The Thai people accept very, very well what their young women do. And I suppose it's very broad minded because it's kind of like, well, what's the choice? They work in a paddy field or they do some other, very, very low paid money, or they try and make something of themselves, get a bit of a nest egg together by selling themselves sexually. But also, you see, I think they understand that the sex trade brings in an enormous amount of money, which is spent throughout the whole of the culture. And so that's why they accept it, and they don't want to change it. Whereas Cambodia, they've got very, very strict laws in relation to the sex trade.
Well, that's the thing with Thailand is the sex trade is technically illegal. You're not actually allowed to be a prostitute, really enough. You could actually go into trouble, but the police is just corrupt enough that they don't care. They just
Yeah.
get paid off. But no, I mean, I think it's also because Thai people are very entrepreneurial. You see businesses everywhere, much more than in Europe. Here, it's much easier to just start working, trying new stuff.
Yeah,
But
very, very much like Africa. Those poor countries. There's no infrastructure. There's no benefit, state benefit, anything like that.
it's
The
different
police.
than Africa.
Sorry.
It's fundamentally different than Africa. The thing is, with Thailand, Thai people are very united people. A Thai person from the north and a Thai person from the south, they both see themselves as the same Thai people. But if you see that in Africa you can just move 30 kilometers away and you're already in a different area, in a different tribe, in a different ethnicity. So it's very different.
30
One
meters
is
away.
very united. What?
30 meters away, and you can be in a different ethnicity.
30 kilometers away.
30
I said,
kilometers.
yeah, you just need to go a
So,
city
so,
away and
so
you're already in a
have you
completely
been
different
to
area.
Africa, Josh?
I haven't, but I know people who have.
Yeah. Okay, maybe put it on your list because then you can make a real comparison from your own experience because that's what really counts.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what I've seen from documentaries.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Seems
so
pretty
you
accurate.
got, you got some subject matter.
Yeah, I
Um,
got some subject matter. We discussed simulation theory, so I got this sort of box theory. So basically, the idea that the simulation is a sort of trap to keep you inside of a certain state of mind. Then there's the Buddhist theory, where basically we're living over and over for learning. That's also a very popular theory. And then I'm curious to hear your Christian perspective because you converted to Christianity, correct? If I remember correctly.
a Christian perspective on what the simulation.
Yeah, I thought you converted to Christianity. Otherwise, maybe I changed reality. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you did. My prison, right?
Sorry, I don't hear you that well. What was the question?
You converted to Christianity, correct?
Oh no, no,
Hmm?
no. I'm
That's,
absolutely anti-religion.
that's so strange.
Because maybe I mentioned to you that I wrote a book saying closer to God.
No, that's no. Okay, that's actually kind of scary because I'm 100% sure we had a conversation about that.
Maybe that
That
was
that's really freaky.
in another dimension. The Mandela effect now is fucking with
That's
us.
really freaky. That's actually incredibly freaky because I remember a whole conversation about that. So that's actually very scary.
Right? When was that? When was that then?
When you got out of prison a few months later, you talked about how you turned to Christ and read the Bible.
I read the Bible. Well, I read the
Yeah.
Bible when I was 27, and I've been reading the Bible, for many, many years during that.
Oh, but while in prison, did you really study the Bible and
Yeah, yeah,
decide
continued to
to look
study it,
at
and what I did is I kidded myself into uh, having some sort of belief in that the Christian God was a reality and Jesus was a reality,
Mhm.
because I wanted to see how that affected me physiologically and mentally, because um, I'm absolutely convinced that this whole world, from each individual's perspective, is a creation of our own mind. What we perceive is all premised on what is inside, the way in which our minds are configured, our experience, our genetics, our nature and nurture, all those sort of things. So if we believe in something, Josh, if we really do believe and we keep reading the Bible and we keep praying and we keep asking Jesus for this, that, and the other, then we will kid our psyche into some sort of realm where it starts to take over as a reality. And this is, we can see this very visually, particularly when we look into the Muslim faith, because the Muslim faith is very, very easy to see the level of indoctrination and dogma that they're under. When anyone coming from the Western world or Eastern world can look at that as insane. Their book, the Quran, gives you no reason why any of that stuff would be remotely believable or honourable in any shape or form. And so you can see that they've got very, very peculiar and skewed beliefs, which the rest of the world is so far away from. So you can see they're under a delusion. They're under a religious delusion. They're suffering
I
from.
actually had a conversation exactly about that yesterday. That's
Right.
I talked about how the Quran basically took the Bible and only took the pieces which made a cult of personality, basically.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Quran is really Muhammad's book. It's Muhammad's version. It's not the old stories. It's
no,
just his version, the same dogma with altered descriptions, basically.
yeah, but
That's how I would describe it.
that's the same with all religions. They all borrowed stuff from others, and the Christian religion and the Old
It's very
Testament.
blatant. Sorry, it's very blatant in the Quran because we have the text which
Yeah,
it's based on. We don't have that for the Bible. A lot of these texts where the Bible is based on are they exist, but a lot of them are faded by time because they were
yeah,
just pulled from
lots
stories.
of obscurities, but
Yeah.
yeah, you see the Quran that was written apparently in about 1625, sorry, 625. So
Mhm.
the Old Testament started to be written 1,500 years before the advent of Christ. So the Old Testament is 3,500 years old now. New Testament 2,000 years old. But yeah, there's, well, it is mythology, it's human psychology, all this stuff mingled into one, and somewhere along the line. People have taken it as being gospel, and it's kosher, it's true, and it's legitimate, when it's just hearsay, it's just fantasy, it's just stories, and the vast majority of it doesn't even stand up to being historical. And so that's religion. No, I'm not a Christian. I often state what Jesus has supposed to have said in the Bible, but mostly in the Book of Thomas. And if you look at what Jesus said, then you can't fault um, the honor or intention from what he said. Because he's, let's just say he was an historical figure, um, which he could have been, but most certainly he never proclaimed to be the Son of God. He proclaimed to be a Son of God, and he told everybody that we're all sons of God. And that God is within you and God is without you, And if you want to pray, then you go into your own closet. You don't need a church and you don't need a mosque. So he was very anti the whole Judaic thing. That's why they wanted to kill him in the end, because he went against lots of the things that they stood for and they preached. But that's all convoluted and complicated, and probably not that interesting to people in any case. Um, the simulation theory that we started to talk about with your dad. Um, uh, I mean, what do you feel about that? What's your thoughts on that being feasible?
Well, it's complicated because if there's a simulation, it has to be a reason, and has to be something before the simulation. And I cannot really find a good reason for a simulation. That's my biggest issue. I understand I have a limited mental capability because a rat usually does not realize he's being experimented upon. So I can see that point. But at the same time, I cannot find any good reason why there would be simulation. As in, it's possible, but the reasoning behind it, that's lacking.
Well, I mean, what everybody, and this is absolutely everybody, when I listen to scientific debates with all the top physicists around the world, this and the other, and the questions posed to them about the hypothesis of a simulation, everybody comes at it from the perspective that we are in a simulation. And in my estimation, that's completely erroneous because what they're doing is they are stating that they have a level of autonomy and they are in a simulation. Well, a simulation, by its very context, means that it's simulated, it's fabricated. So, if it is a simulation, then we are all simulated and fabricated as well. And we are not saying or doing anything outside the program. And, if that's the case, then what you're saying here, what I'm saying here, is all written into the simulation. You see,
Yeah,
and this
and
is
that's what I'm
why.
saying. That would be pointless. It would be a huge waste of resources, I would imagine.
Well, okay,
Um,
picture this then. If you say that's pointless, well, movies then are pointless, also in that essence, because we go to a
yeah.
movie, it's all fabricated, every single thing of it is not changeable, and yet we go, we engage in it, and we think it's real for a short period of time, don't we? We buy into it.
So are you insinuating that we're living in a movie in God's mind, as in like we're
Yeah.
a dream made up by God? That's
Yes.
your idea
Yes.
of a
Yeah.
simulation?
Yeah.
That's a way to look at it. Another perspective I would imagine would be possible is that we don't necessarily live in a simulation, but we live more in a simulation created by ourselves, created by the nature around us. Um, a distorted view of the world, which it just leads to a simulation naturally. So basically, determined by preconditions. That would assume we have no free will, but that's due to a biological reason, not necessarily a spiritual one.
Yes, well, when you look into free will, when we take into all the considerations that as logicians we would need to, we would go, well, look, I mean, I some people would say that I've got free will to pick this glass up and to drink from this beer, and you are acting free will now, but the point is, being biological creatures, we need to do that at some stage. And
Mhm.
so, are we doing it via our free will, or is our unconscious genetic DNA telling us that drink water? And it's telling us all the time subliminally, but then now and again, when it gets more important to us, the sparks of consciousness telling us to drink water become more pronounced. And then when I pick up this glass and I've got free will drinking this, I'm acting on my biological necessities. And because it's alcohol, then it could be, oh, your brain is telling you to drink the alcohol because it likes the alcohol. So where's the free will in that as well? So when we look into all those sort of things, we can really, as logicians, we can discount any semblance of free will. And you could say that you had free will, you left where your father is, and you've gone into another part of Thailand because you want to experience. Well, that just could be written into your DNA that that's how you are. Like Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was always going to travel and he was always going to conquer. So
I've never really gone from a position that I necessarily have free will. I know that I have the will to improve, but that needs to be systematic. That needs to happen with the nature around me. I cannot improve without anything else improving. Even improving isn't necessarily things getting better, but more so the conditions for something happening being right. So things can get worse than improving. That's what I mean. But what I've had in my life, I've always had these weird ideas, well, considered weird by most, that I need to go to certain places at certain times and certain things are going to happen. So I've mostly been living my life by those feelings, and so far I don't feel like they've hurt me. But I have always had that sort of end fate kind of idea of
Right. Okay.
always moving towards a certain path, and
Yeah.
you
So
need
you're
to
being
trust in
drawn.
that.
You're being like kind of like spiritually guided and drawn into doing something
I
that
think.
you feel that was always your destiny. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not overly specific, but more like a hint, a feeling that you should be somewhere at a certain time. Not necessarily that you should do a certain thing, but that you should at least be at a place and be a certain person for that place.
Yeah. So, for instance, I mean, my life, I've been driven, compelled, drawn to traveling all around the world. And I've always felt that my destiny lies in these destinations. And I used to say to my friends and family, I'm going, wherever. And people would say to me, well, where are you going to stay? And I'm like, I don't know. Well, what are you going to do? I don't know. Well, why are you going? Well, because there's a compulsion that says that I should go to Canada. And so I look at the money I've got in my pocket, and on the occasion I went to Canada on my own, which was the second occasion when I was like 32 years old, the flight cost me £300, and I only had another £300 cash. And when I arrived at the airport in Vancouver, I came out of the airport and I'm like, what do I do now? And it's kind of like, well, you're going to need to go to where you can talk to people, where you can learn something about any jobs and things like that. So it's kind of like, oh, a hostel then. Okay, got a taxi to a hostel. Then I'm in the hostel. Then you have a notice board, and in hostels, people want work here, this, that, and the other, and then you take it from there. There's nothing there, so I thought, oh, okay, then. But what's the next thing? Looking in the local newspaper for work. So looking in the local newspaper, phoning people up. But prior to that, I need transport. What's the most affordable transport? A mountain bike. So I bought a mountain bike for about 30 quid at the time, so I could drive or cycle to all these places where job interviews and things like that. So why was it that I just decided to go out of my comfort zone into a country where I knew nobody, and I didn't know what was laid out for me, but I felt absolutely confident enough that it was all going to be good and I should be there because the world has something to show me. Are you saying something like that?
Not necessarily that I'm curious if it was actually a good experience, but no, that's not exactly what I think. It's more like I know approximately the type of location I should be, more so because I know there's certain things to improve and I know it's a better place to improve. I'm also looking for a certain calm, but at the same time, a calm adventure, a moving calmness. If that makes, I could elaborate if you want.
So you decided to head to this city outside of the country
Mhm.
where you're staying with your dad.
Well,
And
exactly as a country.
so, as a young man, you're looking for adventure, you're looking for a bit of freedom and self assertion and things like that. So, do you think there's anything spiritual, anything planned, preordained, which took you to where you are now because there's something that the universe wants to show you?
No, not necessarily, because I've more had a feeling that I should be in South America, but I haven't gone to South America. So it's more of a rational thinking. If I'm not in South America, what's the next place most similar? Well, it's the north of Thailand. It's where all the mountains are, where all these different cultures are. It's the same sort of area, but in a very different geographical position. In South
Right.
America, there are a lot of tribes. I really wanted to be when I was wanted to be in South America. I wanted to be in nature, where the jungle was, where the hills are, where there's really that pure nature still. Well, basically next to the Amazon. That was more where it's imagining.
So you're being drawn to big country, the nature, to a place which is peaceful. So
Mhm.
why do you think you're being drawn to those places?
Well, there's more freedom here, and you also meet a lot of people who are very passionate, who have the same feelings. I meet a lot of people here who go here because it's not good where they are, it's unstable, and here they can find happiness. And I think that's a good sign that this is a spot where you can really interact and really find the next step. A lot of people go to Chiang Mai to not for any sex tourism because it's not really any sex tourism here. It's more to explore, see the local tribes, see the temples, see the churches, and really learn all these things. It's a very cosmopolitan but also spiritual city. There are a lot of people here trying to find themselves. Many meditation retreats, for
Right.
example.
So okay, how I'm probing now is this, and I think that if you gave it more thought, then you'd start to come up with some more answers. And you see, what I'm doing now is I'm interpreting what you've just said, like I would interpret a dream. I look at the key words and the emotive words that you say. Now you said, well, it's more of a practical thing. I'm going there because of the nature. I'm going there because of the freedom. I'm going there because of the kindness of the people, and it's kind of spiritual. Okay, well, look at those things. You want kindness, you want spirituality, you want openness, you want freedom, and so you want to exercise that facet of your spirit, and you go to the place which is most conducive in your location to do that. So you are probably unconsciously following your heart. And then you are putting some conscious and rational application to it. So this is saying to me that there's no free will there.
I certainly have an end goal in mind. It's just I see this as a logical step to that end goal. That's
So
what I
what's the
live
end
for.
goal?
I'd rather keep that to myself.
Oh, you brought us to the edge, and then you want to keep that to yourself. Okay.
I, I'll show the end goal. I'll show the end goal when it's actually worth showing.
Oh, you
I'll
can
just say
tell me in
I've
an
I've
email.
been writing a little.
Yeah. Okay. So, what was the other subject matter that you had?
Well, also simulation theory. I really wanted to dissect it logically, but we went a bit off tangent, more about the experiences. But I wanted to discuss. Have you read the book Patrick made
Yes.
about money would all people? You finished it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So have I. Would you like to discuss it? Do you have any
Yeah.
points or feedback?
Yeah.
Then we could show this to Patrick because I made a
Yeah.
few notes.
Okay, so just going back to the simulation theory. Now, the simulation thing, you see, look, we could address that with logic and rational thinking, but the cosmos doesn't work in logic and rational thinking. The cosmos is just what it is, and it does a whole bunch of things which have had humanity in a conundrum and a quandary forever. And quantum physics is a very classic example of this. No one can work out quantum physics. So when we get down to the very, very, very small and the essence of the cosmos, it doesn't work logically. So therefore, we have to discount logic if we're looking for the answer for the feasibility for simulation. Otherwise, we're not going to find it, because all we're doing is we're projecting our egoic rationale onto it, and we are professing, acting as if we are God. And we could be very well a facet of God, a small part of God, but we're not God, whereby we would know exactly how and why a simulation has been produced. So that's why I wouldn't waste my time going into the whole simulation thing with logic alone, because we'd be bereft of half of what we need to investigate.
Well, I tend to use logic more so like an anchor. So if the boat starts going so so strongly that the anchor moves with it, then that's probably a sign that I have anchored in the wrong place. The current is too strong. That's how I tend to view logic. Is that logic is a good thing to stay grounded in yourself, but the moment things start to change, you need to be willing to just pull off that logic and go the right way.
Yeah, yeah. So,
How I view it.
don't get stuck in logic. Or always, be open, absolutely open for everything. And I think if you investigate pretty deeply quantum physics, and you see what the scientists have discovered about how the cosmos works so far, then you'd be equipped with some very, very good tools, to address anything else that you have to think about.
So it's really difficult because there's so many things you can learn. And one thing which I see in people who really look into this stuff is they slightly lose the track of mind because they're everywhere at once. And that's very difficult to make people to make. Sorry, it's very difficult to make people understand you when you are at all these places in your head.
Yeah,
So that's why a lot of very intelligent people are seen as crazy. So what I find very important is to really try to hammer in points where they matter. So you need to really bring the first gate to the people so they can step to the other side. I think
yeah.
we should really like discuss the fundamentals so that people can really look further into it.
If you want an exercise in logic, then yeah, that's good, because that conditions and trains your mind into thinking reasonably and rationally and feasibly, and then you can present an argument. But you won't get to the root of anything in relation to the cosmos with logic.
And
And
as I say, you need to build a logical gate where people can go through. So it's just a gate of some form of logic where then people can go out of that logic.
Yeah, I mean, to present them something that they can get their heads around,
Yeah,
something that they've got an anchor on a root in as a human being. But you see, what we're talking about, if we're talking about a simulation, if we're talking about the nature of the cosmos, if we're talking about God, then we exit what it is to be a human being, and then we have to get very, very metaphysical, and then we do sound like we're crazy to a person who is uninitiated with all the subject matter. Now, this is the thing about philosophy. Philosophy invariably would be open to a great number of things, and they would never discount anything. They would never have any projections, any biases, or any pet grievances or hates or anything like that. They have to be absolutely open and keep looking and looking and looking for more and more and more. So what I've done in my life is I've studied pretty deeply major categories, like, let's just say, cosmology, let's say quantum physics, let's say ontology, what is to be human being, let's say psychology, let's say metaphysics. You have to have some sort of fingers in pies with all of these avenues, otherwise you're leaving one of them out of the equation. And so you're never going to be able to bake the full pie unless you've got all this stuff. And when you do get all that stuff, of course, it gets very, very, very metaphysical, very complicated, and it completely flies in the face of logic. And the real answers to this life aren't in logic. because logic pertains to the human egoic brain. We have to think with our spiritual brain. We have to think with our cosmic consciousness, if at all possible. When people become acquainted with their higher self, with their cosmic consciousness, then they can think from a broader state of consciousness, you see.
So my right eye hurts a bit. That's the difficult thing. That there's a very small line between insanity and genius,
Mm.
and I'm really trying to avoid the insanity part because I've experienced actually how it is to be insane. When I was given medication, I was actually diagnosed psychotic, and I actually had that diagnosis removed after being admitted to a mental institution because the director there, she um, she actually considered that my recovery was so drastic that it wouldn't even be possible that I was insane in the first place.
Right.
I know I was insane, but to her that was impossible to believe that someone could recover from
Yeah.
psychosis that drastically.
So due to the medication. Now, I don't know whether you want people to know what sort of condition people try to label you with. Do you want them to know that or?
Well, I just tend to tell people because it always surprises them because they don't really see
Yeah,
it in
because
me.
look, it explains a lot of things. Because people, the specialists have said that you've got some sort of autism. Yeah,
Well, that's the funny thing is because when I meet people who have studied autism in the wild, they don't actually think I have autism.
right.
So I tend to actually believe that they may have misdiagnosed me.
Misdiagnosed, yes, and I think that's very possible. I don't know a great deal about autism. I'm not proclaiming to be a specialist by any shape or form, but what I think they do in modern times is that anybody that's too intelligent for their age, then they're going to label it with some sort of precociousness, and they want to going to want to prescribe because, like, you know. People who are very intelligent, they're not interested in school because school's so elementary, and so then they want to fill you full of Ritalin and this, that, and the other. And it's kind of like, no, 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 I don't need your Ritalin. I don't need your silly bullshit in school because my mind is thinking about fucking vastly different things. But the society doesn't like that. They want to bring you back down, and they can't cater for the genius.
Well, I see it mostly with ADHD. That was actually what I got the medication for, even though I didn't actually fall under having ADHD. They actually upped my score numbers at my mother's request. But that's even possible. It's ridiculous. But I see it really in ADHD. So a lot of people nowadays are getting diagnosed with ADHD. I believe it's about 10% falls under having ADHD nowadays.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case even 30 years ago.
No.
So I think they're really trying to over medicate certain people
Yeah.
because they're trying to create a shift in society. And I have my own theories about that, but that's more on the political
Yeah,
side.
and of course, the pharmaceutical companies own the world now, along with the oligarchs and trillionaires. And they want to label everybody, they want to categorize everybody, and they want everybody to be lifelong subscribers to their pills and potions. Now, when I was at school, many years ago, I was absolutely disruptive, and I didn't want to listen to anything that they was telling me except geography. The only subject I was interested in was geography. And as it would happen, I would go to travel the world and I would love all different sorts of natural landscapes. And I want to know where different countries are and this, that, and the other. That was naturally born in me. I wasn't interested in any of the rest of the bullshit. So I spent the vast majority of my childhood, school years, standing outside the headmaster's office or suspended from school. And I was suspended from every single school I ever went to, and I just used to roam the woods and the lakes and the rivers with a wild dog that I met along the way. So can you imagine what category they would have put me in at the time? But they never had any of that bullshit at the time.
It's funny because I'm very similar actually. I used to go to nature a lot. I was in the scouts. I loved bushcraft. I used to sleep outside even in huts. I love that stuff. I love exploring. My favorite I also got explored from many schools. But my favorite activity when in school, instead of watching the clock, what most kids do is they just watch the clock hoping that the school day ends. What I did, I used to look at the world map. And I used to think, okay, that's the world map today, but how was it 10 years ago? How was it 5 years ago? I was imagining all these things happening, and I read, and that was more of an interest to me than actually what was being taught at school, which was very elementary. I was more interested in how did human history get to this point, and
Yeah.
how does this reflect to me as a person. That's what I really found interesting. I was only 7 years old when I started looking into that.
Yes, and so, well, that shows that you were a thinking person, whereas, look, most people will start to be thinking, inquiring people. That's human nature. But what these indoctrination institutions called schools do, they close all that down. They close the dreaming down. They close the imagination down. They close the fantasy. They close you drifting away to think about this, that, and the other. And they want you to learn ABC 1, 2, 3, which is reasonable in a technological world because we do need to know A, B, C, and 1, 2, 3, but it isn't the be all and the fucking end. And so when people like you show flair asking questions which most other kids probably wouldn't ask. Well, that should have been nurtured. That should have been catered for. And in certain schools, like in Finland, who's got the best schooling on the planet, apparently, they allow people to go off on whatever their mind is inquiring into, you know?
I actually have a funny but pretty sad story regarding that. I actually used to be the kid who asked so many questions that I actually asked more questions, just me, than the entire class. And one teacher really hated that. So what she did eventually is she grabbed me by my hair and she put me in front of the whiteboard and she's like, "Oh, how do you feel now, smart guy?" And she started publicly humiliating me. And I was like,
Wow.
"Wait a minute, you're publicly humiliating me because I'm asking intelligent questions, which
Yeah.
you're admitting to?"
Yeah.
My father later on actually um, had a very strong talk with her because she was very judgmental, very old-fashioned. But I was just publicly humiliated just for asking questions, and that
Yeah.
was just at a very young age.
That's
I was
it.
physically attacked just for trying to
That's how they
learn.
do it. They'll do it any which way, and they just want to narrow your consciousness down into a very small parameter. Because the people that fund the schools all over the world are the oligarchs who want obedient workers trained, hypnotized into certain fields, which is a utility for them. They
We know
don't
that
want. Sorry.
we know that the modern school system was invented by the Prussian military and by the Rothschild
Yeah.
dynasty. So
Yeah.
there's
So,
a very big history between creating factory
yeah,
workers
so at
and
the end
good
of the
soldiers
day,
and smart
people
schools.
like you and I and your old man, Patrick, obviously, he's just like us. We didn't stand for any of the bullshit, and we don't stand for it today. And we've gone our own way, and we've done our own thing. So let's come back now to the subject that we're just gonna, probably finish off on, because if you only got an hour, we're up to 48 minutes now. So Patrick wrote a book, and the book it's titled "A World Without Money."
No, it's that without money we would all be billionaires.
Without money, we'll all be billionaires. Okay,
Yeah,
so we've both read the book, and
or
what
live
did
like
you?
billionaires. That's
Yeah,
actually the
yeah.
title.
So what do you feel about it?
I'm a bit judgmental because he did write it with the help of AI, and I don't really like the AI writing style. And I see the points he's getting through because he talks about it a lot, and I see there's genuine thought behind it. But at the same time, there are the very repetitive AI kind of concept, like the repeating the word equity a bunch of times, which is just basically modern corpo speak, and emphasizing a sort of international society. And I mean, there is really worth in that, but it's still very influenced by that modern way of talking, which isn't really his, I feel like.
Yes.
But
Well,
he gets the point across,
I'm glad
but
you said that.
that's just my point.
I'm glad you said that because that's exactly the same opinion I formed. It's been too influenced by AI.
Hmm.
It's too utopian, even though
Yeah.
it keeps stating that it's not a utopia. It's not a utopian idea. It's very, very much a utopia, and it's impractical.
I mean, he has a point. You can indeed use AI to plan things. The issue is he doesn't really show how that would feasibly work in a way which wouldn't favor one group over another. He just says,
You know,
"Oh,
he's
we
going to be
would
watching
release
this video,
money, and that
right?
would happen."
You know, he's
Sorry.
going to be watching this video, right?
I know, and I haven't really given him the feedback yet, so I
Oh,
want
right.
to discuss it here with you
Okay.
because you're
Yeah,
also a very intelligent person. You could probably point at my
probably.
one criticism. I mean, I like the book as in I like the image. I like the the message. I think it's a very good ideal to have. It's just the practical aspects of it subdued. He does point to some things. He points to good statistics. He points to why money is a problem that he does very well. But the next step, the intermediate step into getting to that final solution in his head, that he fails to explain, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in my opinion, he is being too kind to the human being. Because the way I look at the world is simply this: if there was ever going to be a variety of utopia, then it would have happened in 300,000 years. But as things are, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And why it's getting worse and worse and worse is because human nature is such an abomination. On the one hand, you've got oligarchs that want to control and suppress everybody. On the other hand, you've got people that want to be controlled and suppressed because they're stupid and fucking lazy. You see, in Patrick's ideal eye, people will be strong, they will be independent, they will be pioneering, they, would all be. It's very much like Plato's Republic, where everybody would be a philosopher as well as a king. You know, all leaders would be philosophers as well as kings. They'd be benevolent and intelligent. But leaders have never been like that, save
That's
maybe
my
Marcus
big
Aurelius.
Yeah. That's my biggest criticism of his concept of a council of elders is that historically, yes, it hasn't worked for the most part, but at the same time, it's very flawed because it does create a inherent hierarchy which perpetuates itself. But what's funny is we agree a lot. Actually, I agree more with you so far than I've agreed with him, despite me not watching your videos.
Right.
But when I brought up that I think his view on human nature is too utopian, he said I was childish. So hearing that from someone more his age is
Right. Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
funny.
I mean, I'm going to speak,
I could go
obviously.
into my criticism if you want.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, sorry. So I just wanted to
I'm going to
say
speak
I
to your
would go
dad,
into my
obviously,
criticism.
about his book, and I'll debate him on lots of the things.
Hmm.
But you know what he was saying, basically, has already happened.
Hmm.
With the only difference that the people who are going to be the council of elders now are all benevolent and wise and wonderful human beings, whereas now they are oligarchs, super intellectuals, and they've got their own idea as to how the world's going to run. Because if you look at the inauguration of President Trump's cabinet, they're all oligarchs. They're all fucking oligarchs. They're all super big fucking tech people, and they've got their own very, very concise ideas of how the world's going to be under their umbrella. So they've got Trump, and then they've got all different sorts of others who are super high tech trillionaires, and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Well, that isn't that a council of elders? Isn't that a council of people that the world holds in the greatest respect?
Well, that's actually one of the things I disagree most fundamentally on with my father. My father supports Donald Trump. I don't. And I see exactly what you're talking about. It's a fake it's a fake populism and it's a fake anti establishment veneer, in my opinion at least, is it's the same big tech people, but different faces, basically.
It's an
The
oligarchy.
same goal. Yeah,
It's an
it's the
absolute
same
oligarch.
oligarchy, just
They're
in
all
different
fucking
place.
trillionaires, and they're all gonna mold the world how they want it to be, without any
One
say
thing
from
which,
people.
one thing is what is very different from the current society. What Patrick's point to is he really wants a sort of autonomous society where every segment of society has its own autonomous living, which is good because that helps against authoritarianism. Right now, we are being more pulled into a very individualistic, but in a mass sense of society where everyone is an individual, but within a globalized society. So
Yeah,
no one is really self-reliant, but no one is really in solidarity with anyone at the same time.
yeah.
So
Well,
that's the opposite what Patrick is proposing. I feel
yeah.
like
Well, on
more
that, you see,
community.
with his idealism that would all cater for ourselves, in between all our lovely houses and our plain parks, where people stand around playing the violin and painting art and doing all these wonderful things because they've got so much leisure. Well, there's all these plants that need planting and need harvesting. There's all these trucks that need to be there to load them all up. There was none of these pictures, in these idealistic depictions in the pictures. It was all, very, very much of a fantasy. It was
Well,
kind of like a
okay,
dream fantasy without the undertowing of the industry, which it would need to create.
Aaron, here we disagree. Is he does point to that there would be calculation done where you'd only have to work a certain amount of hours, and that's possible. We can work less. The issue is not that we cannot live sustainably and work less. In my opinion, the issue is that we can do that, but there will always be a group of people who will work more and who will try to take over you. My
Always.
biggest criticism when I was talking to him was, how do you think this would survive a state? And he said, because people would love this society, and once it's actually tried, it will spread to everyone. I fundamentally disagree. China is a very authoritarian country, has a lot of control over the media. America is more so resembling it nowadays. And they don't long for a sort of liberal society. That's not what Chinese people want. They're very nationalistic. They have the very authoritarian beliefs. They're also very entrepreneurial. So they don't really strive for an ideal society. They strive to be the best in this dystopian society. That's
Yeah,
why they're actually doing so well compared to the West. Because
yeah.
in the West, we're very idealistic. We want leisure. The Chinese don't care about leisure. They care about succeeding. That's why we're getting outcompeted. And I think that's the issue with his society too. Is we have so much leisure that we just get outcompeted by objectively worse kind of living.
Yeah, and
So to say.
also, you see, Patrick's assuming that once everybody didn't have to work anything like as much as they did, then they would all become budding artists and musicians, and they'd be standing on the street corner philosophizing and all these wonderful things. I think if people weren't commissioned into slave labor, society would absolutely fall apart because people they're so dull in their minds that they very very few people are artistic. Most people would be absolutely bored. They wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They'd eat and drink themselves to death. And if there was a world where people could have anything they wanted, well, I mean, who's to stop people going to get 20 Rolls Royces? Who's going to say no, no, no? You've already had one Rolls Royce. Stop being greedy. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants a Rolls Royce. That's completely impractical. So take away the Rolls Royces. Well, what else is there? Oh, well, there's little buggies. Well, everyone's got a little buggy. But then what you've done is you've took away the opportunity for someone to have a Rolls Royce if they so decided. So therefore, you end up into a communist state. And that's the
That that
difficulty.
that was my second largest criticism of this book, and I was talking about him about that when I was writing it. Is he thinks that, and I think it would make sense if people were more kind and better educated, and in some societies it maybe could work. I mean, there are good cultures out there, but is that he thinks that if there would be no scarcity, people would not want an excess of things. The issue with that, in my opinion, is that there'll always be people who will try to abuse any system, even if there's an overflow of certain resources. Just look at buffets. Some people in buffets just try to eat as much as possible, even if it's hurting themselves, simply because they know they can get more worth out of it, which is ridiculous. It hurts your own body, but they still do it. Society is very self-destructive, and what I told him, and I think maybe he's a bit disappointed in me for saying that, is I believe fundamentally that only about like 5% of humanity actually leads anything, actually develops anything, and the rest is more so following along, trying to find their own way, but not actually improving themselves actively. It's
No,
only 5% of the time.
completely and utterly dependent on society to be told what to
Yeah,
do. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
I don't have any allegiance with this utopia whereby all of a sudden, if we didn't have to work, then we'd all find wonderful things to do, and we'd all instantly take an interest in nature and start studying the stars. And no, the human being would fucking slump into an uncontrollable fucking chaotic cesspool. I'm absolutely positive about that. The only thing that keeps the human being in a structure is the being ruled by an iron staff. And you know, if we look back over all the 300,000 years of whatever history we've got, we've seen that it's always needed to be that way. The only time it was never that way is when it was in very, very small communities of like 150, 300 people, which is the ideal sort of average community, self-contained community, whereby some would be hunters, some would be farmers, and some would be builders, and some would be carers, and whereby everybody needs everybody, and they'd all be brought into line, and they'd all know what to do. That would be Patrick's
How,
ideal world if we all lived
how
in little
I'm
pods of 300 people.
sorry, I apologize. How I view it is, I think that humanity currently is very traumatized by millennia upon millennia of very tyrannical rule, and we even have it in a household. Many households function very much like a dictatorship, and we're getting beyond that. I think we're making social progress, but at the same time, it is also getting worse on certain parts. So we're making sort of sideways progress in humanity right now. But I think it needs to be a gradual step, as in we need to gradually get away from these tyrannical institutions. I think humanity would benefit a lot from slowly removing our dependence on governments and slowly increasing the autonomy. But doing it all at once is a suicidal endeavor.
Yeah, I mean,
That's my opinion.
if I look on the positive side of what Patrick was envisioning, um, the reason why it's so difficult, I think, to comprehend, because we've never seen it. And if we've never seen it, then it's a case of, well, could it really exist? Because what I instantly fall back to on a default setting is the nature of the human being very psychoanalytically, psychologically inclined. I'm looking at all of the flaws that the human being has and would very, very quickly become apparent when they have more time on their hands. And so when you look at all the traits that human beings have, there wouldn't be any less crime, there wouldn't be any less pedophilia, there wouldn't be any less rape because people are not working. When people have got more time on their hands, then their natural traits would need satisfying, and they'd have more time to pursue it. And if you've got people who are naturally domineering, then they're going to be dominating the crowd wherever they are, and people are going to get fucking fed up with that. You know, for instance, you know, in these depictions of people playing a guitar and a few people sitting around, and then people are cooking, and then people are doing this. But the human being just isn't like that. All it's going to take is one person to stand on a fucking soapbox and start shouting their mouths off, and then you've got all different sorts of people. That loggerheads, half of them will agree, and the other half won't. People need controlling massively. And they
Well,
do actually need their minds dumbing down. Look, what's happened, Josh? In America, you can see it very, very clearly. That nation is absolutely dominated by the propaganda, by the propaganda machine, and there is no way out of that because they've been conditioned from the very, very get go, and so they are being shown heroes. America is always created the heroes, the Superman and the He-Man, and all these fucking heroes. The Americans love a fucking hero. And so all you got to do is you got to show them Donald Trump. You got to show them Elon Musk. You got to show them, fucking Jeff Bezos or any people like that are going to take America into the dizzy stars. They all need these fucking heroes, but unfortunately, these
Oh,
heroes
come on.
have so much fucking power and they will manipulate them down below. And that's what's happening. And then you saw it. You can see it. Look, if somebody owns a fucking social media, like let's say Zuckerberg, then Zuckerberg can tick or cross whatever he wants on that platform. And very, very quickly, overnight, he can guide humanity in a certain direction. And that's what's happening. And that's who Trump has got involved with $500 million invested into AI to have manipulation and control over the human psyche. That's the only way forward as population expands.
Well, I think you have maybe an overly authoritarian view of things in that aspect, but I do get where you're coming from. Trump has indeed been a master of using the algorithms, using the AI. We know with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, we know that he's friends with Peter Thiel, and that nowadays even so Elon Musk also bought Twitter. So yes, but I was meant to say Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg nowadays is also saying, "Oh, I actually support Trump," you know, because actually all these media moguls are going behind him. It was just a lie that they were against him.
Yep.
It wasn't about that. But going back to the point of the book, I do believe that human nature can theoretically be like that, and we have precedent. But what you were getting to, that people would suddenly rape and kill, I think what you're imagining in your head is like Pol Pot's Cambodia. Do you understand what I mean? Do you
Mm-hmm.
know anything about Pol Pot's
Yeah.
Cambodia? So what Pol Pot did is he was a communist. He took over large swaths of Cambodia. He abolished the bank. He actually got rid of money,
He
and
also
he
abolished
led every
educating the nation
yeah.
educating themselves, and he fucking killed anybody that wore spectacles because he considered that they were the ones that probably the most intelligent. So he applied that sort of dumb, stupid logic in the killing fields. Um, wow, this is the human being. Utopia. I don't know about that.
Well, I'm going to now push my own idea of what an ideal society would look like, irrespective of the book. Is I think what's most important and most realistic is that we create systems wherein free-minded people can actually survive all these dumbing down processes, all these tyrannical governments. So not necessarily looking for something for everyone, but more so looking for how we can survive as a group, as a free-thinking being, that we will not simply get squashed by the evolution of technocracy. So to say.
Yeah, you see, look, in Patrick's ideal world, when everybody has this free time to do whatever they want to do, to educate what they want to do, and to follow their dreams, and to be creative and everything, well, out of that creation, you're going to get people that want to invent this, and they want to create that, and they want to, express themselves in a way in which people do in the capitalistic world. When Elon Musk had an idea about, building an electric car or sending, a module to Mars, or when Zuckerberg had a twinkle in his eye about having a social platform, when Bill Gates thought, like, wouldn't it be great to have an internet in every company, this, that, and the other? Well, in Patrick's world, well, how could that happen if there were no businessmen, there were no entrepreneurs, and there were nobody that could follow their real dreams, because their real dreams needs employing every other person below them in a hierarchical system to get that off the road and to make it practical. How would that be practical if everybody's the same and everybody loves life and everyone's working 3 hours a day?
So that's where me and Patrick differentiate a lot. I completely agree with his idea that we should get rid of patents. Patents are basically legalized monopoly. We should rid of by far most private property. There's so much property accumulation. It's basically creating modern landlords of the old feudal days.
But yeah,
Yeah,
but
there are very real problems which create a pyramid structure in society which is very unequal. But that
yeah.
doesn't mean we should get rid of people's inherent want to compete, you know? He thinks that competition is a bad thing. I believe that it's a necessary thing. And I believe
Absolutely.
that to work together properly, you need to be able to interweave. You need to be able to rub the fibers together. Just putting the fibers next to each other won't make the fibers unite, so to say.
Yeah, and we need to have the yin and yang. We need to have the good and the evil. The world could never ever, go full steam ahead without evil always being looking over your shoulder, or in actual fact guiding it. Because when we look at what the world has done and the sporadic states of global evolution, invariably they've all come about in a time of war when people really, really needed to dig down and to get the upper edge, like the Turing machine, to crack the German Enigma during the Second World War, like Marconi, or like the development of rockets, all this sort of stuff. This has all been absolutely useful and utilitarian and pioneering for humanity globally. And so, without these crises, people wouldn't be really frustrated and governing, to
That's
lovely
that's
things.
the that's the that's the fucked up thing about invention and human evolution is that we tend to invent the most things when we're at war.
Yeah,
That's the weirdest. When we destroy the most, we invent the most.
yeah,
That's what the major issue was during the Soviet era, is that because there was no competition, people just stopped inventing. They just
yeah.
did what
Why
worked
would
and they were
they?
lazy about it.
Why would they? Because if everybody's going to be the same, then if you're going to be inventing something, then who are you going to go to tell your invention? And if you're not going to be benefiting from it, then why would you want to labour over and above everybody else? And I can't see. I think the whole thing about the human nature, we press forward because we want personal gain. We don't press forward because we want our community to enjoy the benefits of the things that we're going to be inventing. I don't think anything really has been invented. Like the electric light bulb, for instance. Everybody can have a light in their home. I think there's always been an ulterior motive which has kept these people trying and trying and trying and trying and trying to achieve to become something other than what they were and what other people are around them. And if everybody has the same house and everybody has the same car, then that's exactly communism, where all the fucking sky-rise buildings were grey and the same dimensions, and there's only one little nasty car of a Moshkovich, and everybody wore brown clothes and nobody looked any different. And so, how do you fucking scratch a utopia out of that?
The thing with communism is communism actually tends to work for the first 20 years. If you look at the USSR, sure, a lot of people died, but the USSR went from basically being completely feudal to being a modern power. But the issue is when the allure fades away, when you get rid of all the energy of the revolution, it dissolves itself. We saw this in China. Mao changed the whole entire society. It was a cultural revolution. Where's the cultural revolution now? China is just one of the many oligarchical nations.
Yeah.
It's gone. Humanity tends to oligarchy. Um, but now we need to move on. How would you view an ideal society? Because it's good to criticize and give certain insights on the book, but it's also important to propose different things or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
co-opt
Yeah,
and
it's easy to tear
change things.
down, but it's very difficult to build up. Well, being the proverbial skeptic and not having a faith in any level at all of utility, utopianism with the human being. Um, I think that the only way that the world could be is the way in which it is now. And if you go, well, use your imagination, and I'm kind of like, look, people, billions and billions of people all over the world for supposedly 300,000 years have used their imagination. And this is the end result. I think this is as good as it gets. And to be quite frank, when I was reading Patrick's book, I'm like, Patrick, I don't want that fucking life. My life at this moment in time is absolutely perfect as far as I can see. And it's born out of the back of all these other people working in sweatshops all over the fucking world, producing stuff that I can buy with government money. And so why would I want to change this? Why would a look? All we've got to do, Josh, is just ask people: would you want to change? If we're going to have this global utopia, it means that we in the Western world are going to need to relinquish the vast majority of our privileges to give it to the poor people. Who
That
is
is
going to
true.
want to do that? Nobody. So therefore, then, I'm not voting for Patrick's world. I'm voting for this world because this world is suiting me very, very fine. Thank you. And in all my life, it has done. Because I decided that I wanted to create a little empire with my businesses and my job. And I had ideas and I employed people and I went and got it. And it was brilliant. And everybody around me enjoyed it because they got employed. Fuck,
Alan,
yeah.
Alan, I don't want to insult you, and I assume the best of you as a person. You seem like a kind guy, and I've only heard good things
Do it.
about you.
Do it.
But don't you think you're a little bit psychopathic in that way of thinking? Because I personally, if I could vote to end all that exploitation, I would, even if it means I had to live on a bridge. But that's me. I
Hang
mean,
on, hang on, hang
I'm
on.
insane.
So look, are you saying that you would live, let's say, in one of these high-rise communistic buildings, 30 meters square, along with
No, I'm not a
everybody else?
communist. I'm
Sorry?
not a communist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not a communist.
No,
What
but
what I'm saying is,
I think it's the same thing, Josh. I think it's the same thing. So if we're all living in communal houses, we've all got the same houses, then that's communism, isn't it? It's about a community. And no, it's not a capitalism. So therefore, we're all the same. Where does all the money come from? It comes out of the community. So, I think people have to they change their perspectives on communism because they just think, oh, just because it all went wrong in the end, then communism is bad. Well, look, if what Patrick is describing, that's communism. By any fucking stretch of the imagination, when everybody's communing around in the community and all the cars are the same and all the houses are the same and all the privileges are the same, isn't that
well,
communism?
if you want to be really technical, if you want to talk political, ideological, name jargon, it's technically autonomist, technocratic communism. That would be the technical definition.
Okay, so getting back to
Technocratic,
the
autonomous communism.
psychopathic thing. Now, look, I don't think it's psychopathic to say that I'm very happy with the world now. And let's just say there's a third of the world or two-thirds of the world which work in sweatshops, providing facilities for us to live like kings in the Western world. Now, I was born into the Western world. I was born into my privilege, white privilege, and I'm very happy with it. And I don't want to relinquish it so people can, instead of living in straw huts in Africa, live in fabricated ones. And I live in a fabricated one also. I mean, my benevolence for humanity doesn't extend to that, Joshua.
Well, maybe I'm coming from a Jewish perspective where historically Jews have been very much on the lower side of the hierarchy of humanity. So I can empathize with all these people being treated like shit, like subhuman, just like how my people were just 100 years ago. Maybe it's cultural, but me as a person, when I see that happening, I would rather live on the bridge than have these people work for me, or even having a phone. I would rather not have a phone and have all these people suffer. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well,
And some
are they?
people will always suffer, but I think that the people who should suffer are the people who cannot learn. The people who are too dumb who have to be guided. Maybe they should suffer, but not the people who are just born and immediately thrown into a mine, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, when we look at these documentaries, we look at people working in the mine. I've watched many, many videos of people with bare feet, African people working in, like, let's say, emerald mines or diamond mines, and, they're all scratching around for this, that, and the other. At least they're earning a living, and at least they've been able to provide for themselves. And they don't have to go to work in the mine. They can choose to plant fucking plantain in a field or work for a farmer doing that. So it's all a choice. And all about this suffering. Well, look, if we look back at the origins of human being, well, we were born to suffer. That's what we do. If working under the sun 12 hours a day all of your life in squalor and for very little is suffering, that's the nature of the human being. And so to come out of that, then things radically have to change and resources have to be exploited. And one of the resources is human labor. So human labor is always going to be exploited. And so, when we look at the Western world, with what we've got, naturally it's because of the exploitation that we've done over lots of other countries like the continent of Africa and places like that. And so, but with that level of exploitation, it has enabled people in the Western world to create all these other wonderful things which most of the world will benefit from. And so it's not a bad thing, and we can't be pointing the finger, because why this is so, Josh, is when you look at human nature, it takes a humanity to create the world, and we have a hierarchical system which is absolutely natural to nature. We need people working in bare feet in mines, just as well as we need billionaires in suits bossing everybody else around. We can't level the whole fucking thing to an ideology which isn't actually reality for the human being. Because that means all the top thinkers have got to stop thinking and stop doing what they do. They're not going to do it, and all the people on the bottom, all of a sudden, they're going to rise themselves up and be billionaires and entrepreneurs and all this. They're not going to do that either. The world is what it is because that's just how it fucking is. After 300,000 years of evolution, this is it. And there's lots of people, Josh. Just let me finish. Who are very, very happy. And another thing, I recently watched a documentary about India. And it was like, look at this shanty town scum slum in India, and it's next to all these skyscrapers. So you've got this shanty town where everybody lives in a corrugated fucking tin hut, and then you've got these skyscrapers with billionaires, high tech people. And so this person went to interview the people in this shanty town and said, like, so is the government got a problem with you guys? No, 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 no. No problem at all. Well, why? Well, we're the backbone of the country. Look around. Every single little shantytown squalor was producing this and producing that and producing something else. Everybody was working. They weren't, all barefoot working in the fucking mine. They were doing something else. They were making a little plastic thing, a little metal thing, this, that, and the other. They were making all of these things that get shipped out all over the world to build televisions and to build washing machines and this and that. An absolute necessity. And they were doing it at a cost which is also very, very befitting, which it was the only way which everything could fucking work due to the price structure. So that was a necessity. And everybody within that squalor, they were all busybodying around, very happy with their own entrepreneurial job. And so no one's suffering. This is what I'm saying. All this suffering, it's just an idea that people have, a projection. We can say, oh, these people in the mines are fucking suffering. I've worked in fucking building firms 12 hours a fucking day, suffering more than them motherfuckers, or at least an equal amount, with frost and snow slapping on my face, breaking my fucking back, soaking wet, shoveling concrete. That's fucking suffering. I've done that in one of the most richest countries on the planet. Rant over.
Okay. So I've made a few observations that you're very nihilistic, to my surprise, and I think
Nihilistic.
yeah, nihilistic, as in you don't believe there's actually any worth in changing things. It's more so you need to focus on yourself, and what happens is just what's supposed to be.
No, no,
not
nihilistic
actually
is
going
if you
to
don't
change,
believe in
not actually
anything
going to
and
focus on.
everything leads into nothing. That's nihilism. What I'm saying
Yeah,
is, I
that's what I
look
mean.
over the world, Josh, and I say, well, I think the world is functioning perfectly as it is. There's always going to be hierarchical systems. We've got so many people that don't have the mentality to be able to do the things that lots of other people do. And so, when you look at how the Industrial Revolution came about, when you look at, how certain innovations came about, this, that, and the other, it's the odd thinking person that decides they're going to be entrepreneurial and they're going to create something. They're going to create jobs and livelihoods for other people. That's how the whole world's been created.
Alan, what do you think about historical cycle theory that actually we're following history by a set of cycles? Because revolution is needed and revolution does change social aspects in society. What do you think about that? Because it does change. The
What?
same kind of relations stay, but it does change. We used to go from a feudal society now to a capitalist society, now to a more technocratic society. We are evolving. It's not
Yeah.
just the best we can be. We are going to eventually change to a next step of evolution, so to
So, I
say.
mean, do you consider that the next step of evolution is a utopia?
Um, Likely not. Sadly enough, I feel like within my lifetime, I'd likely see a world mostly full of robots instead of humans.
Yeah. So what are you actually arguing for?
What I'm arguing for is to not give up and to mostly focus on, you are not one of the masses, so try to live a life not like the masses. Don't follow the herd into the butcher shop.
Well, I mean, I'm not a billionaire, evidently, and I'm not
No.
working barefoot in a mine. I'm living an existence which is very, very modest for British standards. I don't want for anything because our society is at such a level of development whereby its citizenry should not be actually sleeping in doorways. And what I've done in my research in my life, I've gone and I've spoken to these people sitting in doorways with their dogs and their paper cup. And I've decided that it's all a choice because Britain does have a very, very adequate social system whereby you can go and get benefit from the government, but you just need to fulfill certain criteria, i.e., you've got to have a fucking phone and you've got to have an address and you've got to comply with a few things. If people don't want to do that, I don't want to have a fucking phone and them phoning me up, well, then you go and live in a doorway and you beg.
Look, when you're like in a third world country or just like a poor country, do you like give money to these people who
Yeah.
you see begging? Or yeah, you do.
Well, yeah, I give to people who are begging, but I don't need people to beg before I give. I've given
Yeah,
to
same.
more people
Same.
who haven't begged just because they've been poor and I've had a relationship with them, I've encountered them, and because I could, I did. So I've spread a little love, and I've done that, throughout my life. And I don't think there's a problem in spreading love. That's why we've got NGOs. We've got non-profit organisations doing this in Africa and India and all these different sort of places. And there's a certain part of the vast amounts of wealth that we have in the West that we do give to other countries. And so I don't know whether it can get any better than that. That's what I'm saying. How much do we just keep giving? At what detriment? Do we, what's Patrick saying? We have to reduce everything that the people with brains and power and determination have worked for just to give it for people that have never done that and never will. What sort of society are we creating?
Historically and in realistic society, I'd say what needs to change is not necessarily the wealth distribution, but the systems leading to that wealth distribution. As in, the people themselves need to change how they function to be able to rise up to that level, rise up to that wealth. For example, Jews went from being the poorest people in Europe to being the richest people in the world. So it's more about creating the systems between people than just removing the money or distributing the money equally, you know?
Well, I
It's
don't know
more
whether
about
Jews were ever poor.
well, the Jews were objectively poor during the Serf era. You can look at the Jews in Eastern
Well, okay,
Europe.
if we go back, thousands of years, then, ultimately they all have the same opportunity. And that's the thing about it. You see, so look, if we look at a utopia, then are we going to deny a whole nation of people that wanted to strive and make something of their nation? Are we going to be saying that no, you're not allowed to do that? So therefore, we are going to be an oppressive utopia, because if you've got a whole nation of people that want to spread out all over the world and enter into banking and big business and this that, and the other, then if the utopia says no, 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 nobody can be any different to that, so we need to suppress you. So it's fundamentally completely unrealizable, and it's a fantasy of the human being to want to raise other people up, and it's a benevolent sort of notion. But my question is, and you've already stated that you would, live in a shanty house, the same as them. But you get a house, and then you see if you want to relinquish it for your shanty house. And I think you'll be of a very different opinion. And ask Patrick if he wants to, give up whatever wealth he's got now to spread it thinly over the whole fucking globe to raise up Africans and Indians and this, that, and the other. I think you're going to find that there's a massive amount of resistance. And so I don't think that's psychopathic. I just think it's human nature. We always want to do the absolute best for our own
Ha-
selves.
so, have you read The Ego on His Own by Max Turner?
No.
I think he hits on this somewhat in his book. Is what he basically argues for is that the whole idea of community is a spook. It's a fake idea. We all actually just live for ourselves, and we're making these ideas to benefit ourselves. We're not actually doing
I
this
like
because we
that book
care, or
already.
because we can imagine ourselves as them, so we pretend like we care.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I like that book already, and that's exactly what my knowledge and my experience will tell me about the human being. I'm not 17 years old. This is what I'm saying. I've been around the world. I've seen how people live all over the world, and I just don't consider that any of these nations could be any other way. Because if they could be another way, then they would be another way. And it's not just down to certain nations exploiting certain lands. It's down to the whole ethics of a nation. When I lived in Africa, they just have a completely different ethic to life. They're not going to get up every fucking morning and go and do this and go and do that, and they're not going to go and educate themselves, and they're not going to do this and not going to do that. If the whole world was transformed with the same education system and the same opportunities, if we're all conditioned like battery hens, then okay, but who the fuck wants a humanity which is just battery hens? No, we like the flair, we like the aggression, we like the war, we like the poverty, we like all the pomp and the beauty.
That's the interesting thing about Max Turner's book, is that his whole proposition is that we need to get rid of all these ideas that we can just equalize. And he was very anti-communist. He actually had many debates with Karl Marx himself. He lived in that era. His whole point is we need to get rid of all these moralistic concepts. There will always be slavery, and it's not necessarily a bad thing in his mind too. He thinks that we're all here for ourselves, and the best thing we can do is create unions of people where we are doing self-interested development instead of trying to pretend like we're going to help everyone. So basically, he had a very individualistic form of society. That's what he envisioned, is that you need to do what gets you ahead. You need to create a society which prioritizes the needs of every individual, but not every individual gets their needs equally met. There was this point that you need to be a realist, and you need to be able to work within that society, and you need to get rid of all these preconceptions like Christianity. He had a whole part of the book dismantling Christianity. That was the first part of the book. So he dismantles all these moralistic concepts, basically to show you that there's no morals. You just need to be able to function in society and become a free human, free of all these concept holding you back,
Whoa,
basically.
whoa, whoa! I like that guy. I'll have to make a note
It's
of.
like, I
Sorry.
think it's like 400 pages. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but
What
200.
was
I
what's
think
his name?
400 pages. Max Turner. He's a German philosopher.
Max Turner. Okay, well, look, I made a video today, and basically, what I said a lot of things, but one of the things I said was that I don't believe in compassion. I don't believe in love. I don't believe in kindness. In the words of John Lennon, I don't believe in Krishna. I don't believe in Buddha. I don't believe in Jesus. I just believe in me. That's the human being. We have a survival instinct, and we will work in society as if it's absolutely necessary. And the reason why people get along so well is because they're fake with their kindness, they're fake with their love, they're fake with their compassion, because it's been proven with testing time and time again with psychology tests. One of them's been the Stanford prison thing. You leave people for their own devices for a few fucking seconds, and you'll see abject evil come out of them. The only reason the world looks so good like it does is because underneath, where most people can't see, is tyranny. It's oligarchical tyranny, which is pulling all the strings to every motherfucking thing. Because without that, there would be chaos, and there would be revolutions on every
That,
street
that's
corner.
funny. Max Turner exactly pointed to that before we knew modern psychology. His book, I believe, was written in 1840,
Right.
around that time.
Yeah.
So that was before we had all these experiments, all the knowledge
Yes.
you were talking about. All of this is very recent. But he already hit to that point. Sadly, he
Yes.
didn't get to live for long, but
Well,
at least he made
this
his
is the
point.
thing with visionaries, because look, at the end of the day, what I always maintain is when we become awakened into a certain realm of consciousness, then we are in the same realm as all other human beings, within reason. You've got, some so-called super geniuses which can, do super math. But even when we look at the people like Einstein, who we owe so much for, during the onset of the Second World War, Einstein was vouchsafing for pacifism. He was saying, "Oh, just leave Hitler alone. He'll get blown away in the wind. Nothing will ever come of it." And politicians around says, "Einstein, stick to your math. Stick to your fucking theories of this, that, and the
I,
other. Fuck out of politics because you're an idiot."
Eichner was basically a communist. I mean, he was very open about it. He even wrote a paper basically espousing the socialist ideals of Marx. So yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, so when we look at all these so-called geniuses, look, they're bright sparks in a certain realm, but in any other realm, they're just as equally as stupid as anybody else. Couldn't even put a fucking plug on a fucking electrical flex.
I think it's the most miserable life is to be a super genius, is because everyone expects so much of you, but in reality, as a super genius, you can only really focus on one thing, one subject, and everything else just disappears because your mind is so vast that everything else just fades into the vast
It's
uh,
pretty overwhelming,
sea of
and
knowledge.
so if you look at Musk, well, he's got 11 kids apparently, and so are we supposed to consider that he's, giving the required amount of parental devotion to ensure that his children are going to be, fully realized and
But
um, decent human beings? They're going to be reft of the father figure. They had this fucking crazy genius out there doing this, that, and the other. They never knew their dad. To be fair, I think that would be
Aaron,
a fair assumption.
Aaron, it's generational. I mean, Elon Musk, his father was a terrible man. He basically owned a part of a slave mine. Elon Musk is basically doing what his father did to him, but in the
Yeah,
modern era.
yeah.
He's being the entrepreneurial guy, focusing on his own, just squeezing all the money, getting the government positions. He just cares about getting power. That's all he really finds interesting. And his children, already, I believe two of his children basically denounced him. He had many divorces. I mean, he's not going to be a good parent. He's going to create a lot of small Elon Musk by being just as shitty as his father was, but in a different way. That's how I see it. It's generational.
Yeah, and so being true to my character, what I always do, I always look at the pros and the cons, and it's kind of like, well, look, Musk is provided for all of his family more monetarily, educationally than the vast majority of the world could. They all would live in
Mm.
wonderful houses, and they'd have everything they ever needed, and they'd have the best education to set them up in life. Okay, they're bereft of a certain facet of parenting, but we can't get everything in life, can we? And so I
I,
think he's done well. Okay, he wasn't bouncing them all on his knee, but he's done other things. And this is what I'm saying in relation to the human race, Josh. We all do different things, and we need to have our variances. We need to have our differences. We need to have our poverty, otherwise we'd never realise, how our grandiosity. We need to have our stupidity, otherwise we'd never realize our genius. This is how the cosmos is. The cosmos is a polarity. And, if the cosmos depicts that everything has to be a polarity, who the fuck is the human being that thinks they're going to level that out with the human being? Who the fucks think they're going to do that?
I think that you have. I don't think this is an actual term, but a king's mentality, as in you watch society as the one who's reigning, looking at the subjects. The king's mentality is that you don't care if your children are going to fight. That's actually a good thing because the best one is going to get out of it and prove his worth and create a more competent society. He's going to be a better ruler than the pampered child of the bunch.
Yeah.
Because the pampered child of the king is always going to be a bad king. That's just a precedent. We saw this with Nero. We saw this with Caligula. We saw this with the Habsburg monarchy later on, where basically everyone was pampered and into bread. So kingdoms fail when you go soft. Good societies tend to fail when people go soft. I think you have a king's mentality, is that you don't want your children to go soft.
Absolutely, I do have a king's mentality, but I also have the mentality of a philosopher. And so, like what
Yeah.
Plato reckoned in his Republic, where all kings should be philosophers, well, that's how I would lead, and I wouldn't lead the world into this mediocrity of weakness, just like the left has been trying to do for this past 20 years, bring the
Mhm.
whole world down to a festering soup of inadequacy, where nothing good would come out of that fucking cesspool of insecurity, and everyone's running for the safe room all the time and needs to be on Ritalin when someone says they've got a big fucking nose or they're an idiot. Good God, no. Look, what we want is, we want a world a little bit like what Trump is heading for, where we're not standing for all this liberal leftist shit. It's based on merit. The world he's creating is on a meritocracy, and that's why he's attracted all these oligarchs, because they all want the same, because they're all in that fucking gang that they have raised to the top through their hard work, their striving. And lots of them probably are not a genius on any fucking level, but it's their pure tenacity and desire to do that. And we need that for innovation, because if you don't have that, who the fuck is going to have this desire to create the atom bomb, or to create fucking the science for 200-story high rise buildings and all this sort of thing? I think the human being, it needs the carrot, and the carrot is personal acclaim, it's wealth, and it's some sort of social power that comes with that. We need that sort of shit, otherwise the whole world's going to slump into apathy.
I think I have a good title for this section of the conversation. A modern day Marcus Aurelius. I think that's what you want. A philosopher king who leads by example and accepts society as it is and leads by that.
Now
I
you
think that's
understand.
what you're getting to.
Now you
Yeah, a
understand
modern
it.
day Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you said, am I a little bit psychopathic? I just want to address that. you've come around in the end, and you've ended up, I think now, on the Marcus or Aurelius thing, a thinking leader, which was very in touch with human nature and human failings, and so tried to be as forgiving as he possibly could and make the best out of a bad job. Looking around and see what he saw and realize people have got their failings, and we've all got failings, and so you just do what you can with a high level of understanding. So what I said in my video earlier today, I said we don't need compassion, we don't need love, and we don't need kindness. What we need is rational thinking and straight talking. Because if everybody told the truth as far as they could see it, if everybody gave a rational application to every occasion, then we wouldn't need all the fictions. We wouldn't need the superficiality of a fake kindness and a fake love, because those concepts wouldn't be important anymore. They're only important because people are struggling to make head or fucking tail of their own devious nature, or their own insecurities. Because how many people are so corrupt inside? Their souls are so corrupt because they been brought up in environments which wasn't conducive to them being in the best possible cognitive position to make any sense of the world. They've been corrupt, and they're afraid, and maybe they're angry, and they're arrogant or they're narcissistic. There's so many fractured psyches. If in Patrick's world, the first thing that was addressed was the human psyche, and everybody got educated into human psychology and how people feel. And so when we treat people in a certain way, then we have to know how they feel. And so then, you do unto a person what you expect to do back. And when you suffer the ramifications on that on a level, then you be very, moderate in what you do. I think it's all based on psychology, and we first and foremost, have to have some sort of a standardization of parenting, because parenting, Josh, is the biggest downfall for the human being, because it's non-standard. If we want this utopia, if we want this wonderful human being, we have to have a standardized parenting. Now, if you ever get round to reading Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, then you'll see in there that no females gave birth to any offspring. They were all
Yeah, I've read that.
artificially inseminated, and they were all brought up by state nannies. Therefore, then they had no emotional differences to anybody else. So if they were brought up, just have human values and this, that, and the other, and they were taught this, that, and the other, then they would be in the best possible position to go forward and have some sort of utopian world. But the point is, these days we're all born in different cultures, in different times, under different governments and different leaders and different jurisdictions, and we've got narcissists as parents, and we've got fucking drug addicts as parents. We've got all this shit going on. It's broken from the very, very beginning, from the foundation. So if as a society we want to change that, then we have to go into Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And this is exactly where people like the Trump administration are leading us, because they want the world to be standardized. They want everybody to be chipped. They want everybody to be a hive mind. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because it will eradicate so much trauma. All I'm listening to when I speak with people is their trauma, how they're struggling with life and they're not getting along because they've not got this and they can't do that, and they don't live up to this people's expectation, and nobody else lives up to their expectation, and all this. You see, we're also very, very individual. How could we ever live in this wonderful utopian life just sitting around on park benches playing the fucking violin?
Okay, so one thing I will say is my father is a very good father. I don't think I would wish for any other father in the world. But
You've
that's
been
beyond the
lucky.
point. What?
You've been lucky.
For other fathers?
You've been lucky, man. You know, I don't know how many of your peer group you keep in touch with, but you've got to know very, very dysfunctional families and parents.
I do. Actually, since I was put into special education, I got to meet a lot of dysfunctional people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
So where do they
certainly
all
do.
come from? Where do all these dysfunctional people come from? What's
Well,
creating it?
it's one of two things usually. It's either well-off families but pampered, or it's not so well-off families. They're just the family just getting progressively worse, so to say, with the gene pool. So it's usually these people who are very dysfunctional, or either a basic compound interest of their family, or they are just a very unfortunate drop in their family. It's one of
Yeah.
the two, usually. Nothing in between.
So people may think I'm pessimistic, and most people don't like pessimism. They like to look on the bright side, and they like to feel cozy, and they like to think that there's going to be a brighter future. Well, the way I see the world is the world isn't going to be a brighter future. It most certainly it isn't going to be this utopia where everybody's expressing their passions and creativity in life. It's going to be a chicken farmed world because the world is actually going to necessitate a standardization. We've been doing this standardization for many, many years. Standardization, primarily in Europe happened in, 1700s with the Industrial Revolution. And then in recent times, we've got the AI standardization, and we've got the psychological standardization with the propaganda machine, that all these TVs all over the fucking country in the world are telling us exactly the same thing. The powers that be, they're not just evil and malevolent and want control like, the mad controllers. I can't imagine that all these people fit into that category. I can imagine that the very intelligent people have looked very, very long and broadly across the whole world, and they've got the resources of the whole world, of all AI and all technology and all information, and they've fed it into computers to crunch the fucking data, and they're listening to AI as how it's got to be. And I am an advocate of that. If humanity is going to survive, it isn't going to survive in this fantasy utopian way where we're living beautiful lives and we're strolling around the woods and we're picking flowers, this, that, and the other. No, we're going to be laden, we're going to be burdened with societal norms and expectations. If we want to have all of this stuff, it's going to come at a cost. And that cost is going to be our freedom.
Okay. Well, I would disagree on the whole elite all being these very intelligent people crushing everything into AI. In that, I do agree more with my father. It was with a lot of these elite people. That it's mostly just compound interest. It's friends giving favor to friends, people getting the good education. It's just a compound of rich people having rich children, having friends of rich children. It's more like that, in my opinion. And yes, sure, there's these new technocrats, and we're seeing that class rise, but that's very recent. Most of the ultra rich are not that very intelligent technocratic class. Most of these ultra rich people are just the Saudis. People who just live on a bunch of hoarded wealth through generation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's my opinion.
Well, I mean, picture this then. If you have a chat with Chat GPT, you will discover that Chat GPT is vastly more intelligent than the vast amount of human beings on the planet, even at this stage. You got an issue with that?
I mean, I agree, but at the same time, when I have a conversation with ChatGPT, I always win the conversation because I just know more about the subjects I talk about. But I can imagine with the average person, ChatGPT would probably outthink them. I mean,
You always
I've talked
win.
these subjects
Well,
with
I
average
mean,
people,
I,
ChatGPT just knows more, you know?
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. You see, you can't know more than ChatGPT because all the information from the world is fed into that. So you, as an
The-
individual,
the-
can't know more than them. That.
okay, that's the thing. The issue with ChatGPT struggles when it comes to information overload. A lot of information is fake, and if most of the database is fake, then ChatGPT will give the fake answer. It's biased in a way where you can filter out that bias. That's where ChatGPT falters most of the
Well,
time.
okay. I listened to somebody who was having a moral debate with ChatGPT, and they were giving the standard moral things. You know, what would you do in this situation if there was one baby on a railway line here and three babies on a railway line there? You know, what would you pull the lever on this, that, and the other? Well, you see, ChatGPT can only respond to the information which is put in it, and it cannot give you a moral judgment from a human perspective as an individual, because it's not an individual, it's a collective mind, hive mind. And what it's done is listen to thousands of people with their inputs and their information, and it's had to pick out the general consensus of what would be the
Yeah,
ideal thing to do in the general mean of things. It can't have an individual perspective which is premised on our biases.
and that's the weakness of ChatGPT, is that the average consensus is often not the right one, and that's where ChatGPT sometimes falters. Is that it's very good at the average consensus, but it doesn't really create new ideas. That's the issue. I have to go, but why is my neighbor so loud? I have to go. I thought you were very intellectually stimulating. I think it was a good conversation, especially on the latter part.
Thank you,
Really got
ChatGPT.
into what?
Thank you, ChatGPT.
Are you using ChatGPT all along?
No, no, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's been a great
This,
conversation. It's been, um, what can I say? It's been varied, and it's been, nicely challenging, and
yeah, I like it.
you've got your own opinions, and some of them firm, some not so firm, and so yeah, I mean, I'm sure people will be stimulated by our conversation, and
My biggest
they'll be
question
impressed.
is,
Sorry.
are you stimulated? Did you have to think about something?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, if you've got your own opinions, and if you are broad in your knowledge, and you are, you've got a lot of information there, and you make sense, and so well that it's kind of like an ideal way for the human being to be. What we do is we go through life, and we have experiences, and we gather information, and then we compute that, we cogitate it, and then we express what we've made of it. Well, that's what you're doing in an articulate, intelligent way. And that's all any of us could do, without being influenced by the hive mind, by the pressures of what other people say and think and expect of us. No, you don't do that, and so then that's a very good trait, and so
I I completely agree. And what I find pretty poetic is that we went from talking about one book, and I feel like now we're going to a second book, the book of Max Turner. I think that will interest you a lot. It's a longer book, but I think it's a perfect reading for you.
yeah,
It's
so
a
so
bit more
so
than 200 pages.
yeah, I'll get round to reading that. But yeah, what happens is, obviously in life is when we go through life, we gather up information and experience and everything, and then we carry a certain perspective. And in 10 years' time, my perspective may change again. Depends what happens in the world and how I'm influenced. So nothing I say is concrete as far as I'm concerned. And I don't believe there is anything concrete, no truth whatsoever in the world. It's all like Heraclitus said, the Greek philosopher. Everything is in constant flux. And we need this constant flux. That's what consciousness is. And so consciousness isn't going to allow a utopia where everything is honky dory with the human being. It just isn't going to allow that. And so it just isn't going to allow it. Period. It's never allowed it. It never will. It's not possible, because in this world we've got the yin and yang to cater for, and we need the fucking yin and yang. We can't mellow the yin and yang down to fucking yang. We just can't do that. We can't control the cosmos. This is the human being's downfall. We want the cosmos to be like we want it to fucking be. Stop already. It is what it fucking is. Deal with it, and be be happy whenever you can, and be a bit disgruntled whenever you can't. But I don't think should feel sorry for the rest of the world. They never knew anything else. They grew up in the desert. They grew up barefooted. They grew up, being hungry and not having all this, that, and the other. We can't project our grandness onto them and say poor Africans. When I was living in Africa, Josh, they're the happiest people I've ever fucking met. And lots of them were very fucking smart. So it's not because they're stupid that they didn't all have fucking Lamborghinis and things like that. It's probably because they were clever enough not to fucking want them.
Well, I'd love to prove you wrong, but maybe I'll prove you right. Maybe I will not survive to see the future. Maybe I will. I think it was an amazing conversation, and I'm going to go now. I have to walk, so it's
Nice
very
one, Josh.
enjoyable.
Clear your head. Have a great
Nice
time.
talking to you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks to the viewers also.
Have a good one, guy. Bye.
Ciao.